I never thought an iron gate would become my perfect weapon of destruction, but that morning, when Victoria Harrington, the so-called Queen of Oakwood Estates, knelt down and begged me to open it, I knew. Every drop of sweat, every sleepless night, every penny I spent was worth it. Sometimes justice doesn't wear a robe or swing a gavel. Sometimes it clicks shut with a padlock. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, because this story, it's
Gonna make you laugh out loud. See, I used to be a structural engineer in Houston.
good pay, steady job. But after 15 years of concrete and deadliners, the city started to close in on me. My dad, a country lawyer with a fondness for wide-open land, had raised me on stories of creeks and cows and neighbors who waved instead of glared. When I inherited a chunk of money from my uncle at 42, I didn't buy a boat or head to Cabo. I bought land, peace, freedom. 15 acres of Texas countryside just outside Austin, a creek winding through it, rolling hills that turned to gold at sunset, and just enough flat space to build a modest ranch house. Heaven. The only odd part, the real estate agent mentioned, almost in passing, that my land bordered a fancy subdivision called Oakwood Estates. You're not part of their HOA, she assured me. They like to pretend otherwise, but your deed is clear. At the time, I shrugged it off. I had chickens on the brain and fence posts to plant. But looking back now, that little "just so you know" turned out to be the spark that lit the slow-burning war I never saw coming. The first week on my land felt like a dream. I was sleeping in a used trailer parked near the creek, waiting for house construction to start. Every morning I'd wake to birdsong and dew steaming off the grass. I marked out spots for a vegetable garden, cleared a few trees, and even strung up solar lights along the dirt road that snaked through one corner of the property. A road, by the way, that legally belonged to me. The old owner had let Oakwood Estates residents use it as a shortcut to the main highway, and I figured, sure, why not keep the goodwill going? On day 5, that goodwill died a sudden death. A gleaming white Mercedes SUV came crawling up the road like a predator in pearls. It parked just past my property line. Out stepped Victoria Harrington, tall, tanned, blonde, and dressed like she was about to host a country club brunch in the Hamptons. Right behind her was a man built like a retired Marine, clipboard in hand, not a smile in sight. Good.
"Morning," she called out, all fake cheer and capped teeth. "You must be the new neighbor. I'm Victoria Harrington, president of the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association."
And this is Robert Winters, our vice president. She handed me a thick binder. Rules, regulations, expectations. All properties in this area must maintain community standards, she said, eyes sweeping over my modest trailer like it was leaking oil. I flipped through it. Mailbox colors, acceptable grass height, restrictions on livestock. I looked her in the eye and said, "Ma'am, I'm not part of your HOA." Her smile didn't falter, but something in her eyes did. And just like that, the lines were drawn. She didn't back down. Not Victoria Harrington. Her smile just got tighter, her voice smoother. "There must be some misunderstanding," she said. "All properties in this area fall under our jurisdiction. It's been
"That way for years."
I kept my tone calm. I didn't want to escalate. Yet. "I'm a former engineer," I said. "Reading technical documents is what I do. My deed is clean. This land is independent." Robert, the clipboard sergeant, stepped forward like he was about to read me my rights. "Perhaps you misread your paperwork," he said, tone sharp. "That road's a community access point. It needs to be maintained at HOA standards." That's when I started to feel it, the shift. This wasn't a welcome committee. It was a recon mission. I nodded slowly. If you have an easement filed, feel free to send it over. But until then, you're standing on my dirt, making assumptions. Victoria's mask cracked just for a second. Her eyes narrowed. Having a farm so close to Oakwood Estates could significantly impact property values, she said, her tone dripping with distaste.
I'm sure you understand our concerns. Oh, I understood. She didn't care about values. She cared about control. They left soon after, but not before Victoria tossed out one last jab. We'll have our attorney reach out, she said.
And please keep that road clear. It's used by our residents. I stood there, holding the HOA binder like it was radioactive, watching them drive off. It wasn't even noon, and already the peace I'd chased for years felt like it was slipping
Away?
But I wasn't about to be bullied off land I worked my whole life to earn. I just didn't know how far they'd go to try. That afternoon, while I was setting up security cameras, old habit from city life, a little Honda pulled up to the edge of my land. A woman stepped out carrying a homemade pie, brown hair, jeans, boots, real smile. "Hi there," she said. "I'm Olivia Reed. I live just past those trees edge of Oakwood. Figured I'd give you a proper welcome." I poured her a cup of coffee, and we sat on overturned buckets near the fire pit. "So," she said, eyeing the binder I'd left lying open. "You've met Queen Victoria," I laughed. "You could say that." Olivia's face turned serious. "She runs the HOA like it's her empire. Her husband's a plastic surgeon with deep pockets. Robert, ex-military. He worships the rulebook. And Victoria, she wants everything her way, always." I told her about the deed, about how Lisa, the real estate agent, assured me I wasn't under HOA jurisdiction. Olivia nodded. "I believe you, but you should know Victoria's been trying to buy up every parcel that touches Oakwood Estates. Rumor is she's working with developers, trying to expand the subdivision. The more land she controls, the
more commission she gets. That made my stomach twist. Suddenly, this wasn't just about rules or property lines. It was about money, influence, power. She tried the same thing with me, Olivia said.
When I planted wildflowers instead of bluegrass, she called it unsightly vegetation. Tried to fine me until my lawyer found a loophole. I was quiet for a long moment, watching the steam rise from my mug. She thinks she can bully
me off my land. She's done it before, Olivia said softly. The Ramirez family. Last year, same deal. They didn't last 6 months. But I wasn't the Ramirez's, and I had no intention of leaving. 2 weeks passed, quiet mostly. I got to work, built the chicken coop, tilled soil for the garden, ordered lumber for the house. I started to believe maybe Olivia had exaggerated. Maybe Victoria was all bark. Then the first letter showed up. Official Oakwood Estates letterhead.
Thick ivory paper, formal tone. It claimed my agricultural activities were in violation of HOA standards and demanded I cease all farm operations within 7 days or face fines. I laughed out loud. Then I called my old buddy Daniel, now a real estate attorney in Austin. He offered to look over my paperwork for free. 48 hours later, he called. "Ethan, your land is clean," he said. "HOA has 0 jurisdiction. This
letter is garbage, but keep everything. If they keep pushing, we'll respond."
I kept building. 1 week later, another letter arrived, this time threatening legal action. Same nonsense, different envelope. That same afternoon, I spotted Victoria and Robert on the edge of my property, holding measuring tapes like they were planning a subdivision. I walked up to them, camera in my pocket recording everything. "Afternoon," I said. "Something I can help with?" Victoria didn't flinch. "Just ensuring community right-of-way access meets emergency standards." "That's funny," I said, pointing at the survey markers. Because this entire road is on my land. You're both trespassing. Robert shifted uncomfortably. Victoria's jaw tightened. There seems to be confusion about the easement. If there's an easement, I replied. I'd love to see the documentation, because I ran a full title search, and nothing came up. She didn't respond, just turned on her heel and marched back to her SUV, muttering something about attorneys will be in touch. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was war. That night, I couldn't shake it. Something about the way Victoria had stood there, smug but rattled, made me wonder what she knew that I didn't. So I stayed up, poring over every document I had, and that's when I spotted it. A tiny notation on one of the plat maps, just a number, a footnote. I cross-referenced it with the deed. It wasn't about the road, it was about what the road led to. Next morning, I followed that map out to the far corner of my land, through brush and brambles, until I found it. A squat, weather-stained pump house, half hidden by weeds. Oakwood Water District stenciled on the door. Inside, a main water line hookup. I was standing on top of Oakwood, a state's primary water distribution station, that dirt road. It was the only direct access. Suddenly everything made sense. Victoria didn't care about my garden or my chickens. She cared about the gate to her kingdom. And I held the keys. I called Daniel. "You're going to love this," I said, explaining what I'd found. He did some digging and confirmed it. The water district had a limited utility easement to use the road, but no one else did. Not the HOA, not Victoria, and certainly not random construction crews measuring things without permission. "They've trapped themselves," Daniel said. "Either the road is yours, which means you control access, or it isn't, which blows up their entire infrastructure plan. You're in the driver's seat." We drafted a certified letter, calm, professional, clear. We outlined the utility easement and demanded the HOA cease all claims of authority over my land. Victoria wanted control. She just handed it to me with a bow. After the cease and desist letter went out, things got weirdly quiet. A week. 2. No new letters. No clipboard visits. I started to think maybe, just maybe, they'd backed off. I went back to planting squash and framing out my front porch. Olivia dropped by with her kids. We picked tomatoes, swapped stories. For a second, it felt like I'd actually won. Then came Monday morning. I woke up to the sound of power drills and heavy machinery, rushed to the fence line, and there they were, a full crew setting posts along the property border. Oakwood Estates HOA had contracted them to build a security barrier, a 6-foot concrete wall with a metal gate, right across my access road. I marched over, trying to keep calm. The foreman handed me a permit for fence construction on their side of the line, technically legal, but clever. The placement of that wall cut off my direct access to the highway. I'd be stuck using a muddy back road that turned to soup every time it rained. It was dirty, but also dumb, because that same fence now blocked utility access to the water station, the only road their workers could legally use. The next day, the foreman came by and handed me a key to the new gate. Said Victoria told him to be courteous. That night, I swapped their lock for my own, installed cameras, put up a sign, private road, access by request only. Then I built a simple website where utility staff could request access 24 hours in advance. Emergency? Call my cell. I'd respond immediately. It was all legal, all polite, and it gave me total control. Victoria had built a wall to box me in. She didn't realize she'd just caged herself. The gate hadn't even been up a week when Victoria came storming back. Monday morning, right as I was sipping coffee on the trailer porch, Her white SUV screeched to a stop at the access point. She jumped out, Robert trailing behind her like a reluctant sidekick. Her designer sunglasses couldn't hide the flush in her cheeks. She was furious. She stomped right up to the gate and rattled the chain. "Reynolds," she shouted, "open this gate immediately." I took my sweet time walking over, coffee mug in hand. "Good morning, Victoria. Robert." She jabbed her
finger toward the new sign. "This is illegal. You can't block a community road." I kept my voice calm. "It's not a community road, it's a private road."
"With a documented utility easement for water access, and nothing else. Your fence confirms that. You cut off your own access. I'm simply managing it now." "You're obstructing critical infrastructure," she snapped. "This is blackmail." I smiled. "No, ma'am. This is property rights. Utility workers are welcome. They just need to use the request system, like this guy." Right on cue, a white pickup from the water district pulled up behind her. The driver got out, confused. "Morning," he said. "Here for the quarterly pump check. Guess there's a new gate?" I handed him a card with the website. "Just use that for next time. I'll open up now." As I unlocked the gate and let him through, Victoria stared at me, speechless for the first time since I met her. Robert looked pale. This wasn't the HOA flexing power anymore. This was me, calmly, legally, and publicly showing that every move she made only tightened the trap she'd walked into. And now her own community was starting to notice. It didn't take long for the water company to feel the squeeze. A week after the gate went up, Oakwood Estates residents got a notice warning of potential service delays due to restricted access to key infrastructure. It didn't name me, but it didn't have to. The gossip spread like wildfire. Olivia showed up at my gate 2 days later with a grin. "You're officially the talk of Oakwood. Half the neighborhood thinks you're
a folk hero.
The other half's realizing Victoria might not be as invincible as she acts." Then Robert came by. Alone. He looked tired, deflated. No blazer, no clipboard. Just a man who realized his boss might have led him off a cliff. "Ethan," he said, voice low, "we've got residents asking questions."
"About the fence? About the water issues? Some of them are upset." I nodded. "They should be. Their HOA president blocked off their water supply and picked a fight she couldn't win." He swallowed hard. "If there was a way to resolve..."
"This? What would you need?" I didn't even hesitate. "Formal written acknowledgement from the HOA that this road is my private property. That's all. Then I'll automate utility access. No more friction." He nodded slowly. "I'll take that back to the board." Meanwhile, Olivia kept feeding me updates. Turns out Victoria had been hiding more than HOA overreach. Rumors started swirling about development deals, secret commissions. Residents were furious they hadn't voted on the fence, furious their dues had funded it, furious about the water, scare. And just when things couldn't get hotter, a retired judge named Howard Miller started asking questions at a community meeting. Real questions, legal questions. Victoria tried to shut him down. But this time, no one was listening to her. The next morning, Olivia called me, barely able to contain herself. "You missed a show last night," she said. Howard stood up at the community meeting and demanded to see the vote records for the fence. That's when Jeff, the guy Victoria forced off the board last year, pulled out emails. Emails showing Victoria and her husband working with a development company, trying to buy up land around Oakwood to flip it for profit. I sat down on my porch steps, heart pounding. "And that's not all," she continued. Someone pressed her about it, and Victoria snapped, blurted out something like, "If we don't expand Oakwood Estates, property values will tank once. The Barnes Group project breaks ground." She paused. Ethan, that was your land she was talking about. Turns out Victoria and her husband were silent partners in a shady deal to expand Oakwood, and my little ranch stood in their
way.
They weren't defending community values, they were trying to cash out. The fallout was swift. Victoria was removed from the HOA by emergency vote. Robert stepped in temporarily, and Howard, backed by half the neighborhood, launched a full review of every dollar the HOA had spent under Victoria's rule. A week later, I sat in Daniel's office across from Robert and Howard. They slid a written acknowledgement across the table. The road was mine, fully, permanently. The HOA would pay a small monthly fee for utility access per my terms. I kept the gate, I kept the road, and I kept my peace. The ranch is thriving now. Olivia and I got married last fall under the big oak by the creek. Her kids call the chickens by name. And every morning at 7 a.m., like clockwork, a utility worker calls me for access. I smile and open the gate.